Oh, all right. Settle down, everybody. Homer Simpson here, and boy, do I have something to tell you. You know, people keep saying that my show, The Simpsons, can see into the future or something, like we're some kind of crystal ball with yellow skin and four fingers. Marge thinks I'm crazy for even talking about this, but here we are, and somebody's got to set the record straight about all these so-called predictions everyone keeps yapping about on the internet. So here's the thing, and pay attention because I'm only going to explain this once before I need another duff. People love to say that our show predicted all sorts of stuff, from presidents to pandemics to flying doohickeys. And sure, maybe some things lined up in weird ways, but let me take you through what's actually going on here, because most of the time, it's not as magical as everyone wants to believe. Trust me, if I could actually see the future, I'd be using it to bet on football games, not writing cartoon episodes. Let's start with the big one that everyone and their mother brings up at Moe's Tavern. Donald Trump becoming president. Now, I gotta admit, this one's pretty weird. Way back in the year 2000, we did an episode where Lisa becomes president and mentions that she inherited a budget crisis from President Trump. At the time, it was supposed to be a joke, like the most ridiculous thing we could think of, you know? Like having a reality TV guy run the country. But then 2016 rolls around, and what do you know? The guy actually wins. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe our writers just understood that in America, literally anyone with enough money and name recognition could take a shot at the White House. It's not like Trump hadn't talked about running for president before. The guy had been floating the idea since the 1980s. So really, our writers just picked up on something that was already out there in the cultural atmosphere, like the smell of fresh donuts wafting from lard lads. But here's where it gets really annoying. After Trump actually became president, the internet went absolutely nuts, making fake screenshots from our show. People created images claiming we predicted all sorts of specific Trump moments, and let me tell you, most of them are complete baloney. There's this one that goes around showing Trump touching a glowing orb with some Middle Eastern leaders, and people swear up and down it's from a 2002 episode. Except, and this is important, that image is totally fake, completely made up. Someone with too much time on their hands photoshopped it together after the real event happened in 2017. We never animated that scene. Never. But does that stop people from sharing it? Nope. It spreads faster than gossip about Ned Flanders' new sweater collection. This is the problem with the whole predictions thing. Once people decide we can see the future, they start seeing predictions everywhere, even when they're not real. It's like when I'm convinced there's still pizza in the fridge, even though Bart ate it all. I want it to be true so badly that I'll keep looking until I accept reality, which is usually disappointing and involves me eating a jar of mayonnaise instead. Now, let's talk about technology stuff, because apparently we predicted a bunch of gadgets and gizmos too. People point to episodes where we showed smartwatches, video calls, and tablet computers before they became everyday things. And, yeah, okay, we did show some of that stuff. But here's the secret that nobody wants to hear. These things weren't predictions either. They were just logical extensions of technology that already existed. Science fiction writers have been imagining this stuff for decades before we put it in our show. Dick Tracy had a wrist radio way back in the 1940s. Star Trek had communicators and tablets in the 1960s. Our writers just took existing ideas about future technology and made jokes about them. That's not predicting the future, that's just paying attention to what tech nerds and futurists were already talking about. Take the whole smartwatch thing. We showed Lisa's future husband using a watch to make phone calls in an episode from the mid-90s. Revolutionary? Not really. People had been trying to make wrist phones for years. The technology was heading that direction anyway. All we did was imagine what it might look like when it finally worked properly, and then we made fun of it, because that's what we do. We make fun of everything. Then there's the autocorrect gag that everyone loves to bring up. We had a scene where a message gets changed by autocorrect into something embarrassing, and people act like we invented the concept. But Anybody who used early PDAs and text prediction software in the 90s knew this was going to be a problem. It's not prophecy, it's just common sense. If you make a computer guess what you're trying to type, sometimes it's going to guess wrong in hilarious ways. That's not the Oracle at Delphi talking. That's just understanding how technology and human communication don't always mix well. Kind of like when I try to operate anything more complicated than a toaster. Let's move on to the pandemic episode, because oh boy, do people love to talk about this one. Back in 1993, we did an episode called Margin Chains, where Springfield gets hit with a flu epidemic that comes from a factory in Asia. People lost their minds when COVID-19 happened, saying we predicted a global pandemic with scary accuracy. But hold on a second. Pandemics aren't exactly new, folks. We've had them throughout human history. The Spanish flu, the Hong Kong flu, SARS, swine flu, the list goes on and on. Our writers didn't need a crystal ball to imagine that another flu outbreak might happen someday. It's like predicting that it's going to rain eventually. Sure, you might not know exactly when, but it's going to happen. What made our episode seem prescient was that we showed people panicking, hoarding supplies, and fighting over basic necessities, which is exactly what happened in 2020. But again, this isn't magic. This is just understanding human nature. When people get scared, they act irrationally. They stockpile toilet paper like it's made of gold. They believe crazy conspiracy theories. They look for someone to blame. Our writers knew this because it's happened in every crisis throughout history. We just put it in cartoon form and made it funny. Or at least tried to before reality made it a lot less amusing. Here's something else people don't think about. We've been on the air since 1989. That's over 3 decades of episodes, with multiple stories per episode, thousands of jokes, scenarios, and random background gags. With that much content, purely by chance, some things are going to line up with real events eventually. It's basic probability. If you throw enough darts at a wall, eventually one of them is going to hit something interesting. That doesn't make you a sharpshooter. It just means you threw a lot of darts. People also claim we predicted the Disney-Fox merger. And yeah, there's an episode from 1998 where we joke about Fox being owned by Disney. But this wasn't some mystical vision of the future. Media consolidation was already a huge trend in the 90s. Big companies were buying up other companies left and right. The idea that Disney, one of the biggest entertainment corporations in the world, might eventually try to acquire Fox wasn't exactly a wild leap of imagination. It was more like a cynical observation about where the entertainment industry was heading. Our writers were making a point about corporate monopolies, not gazing into a crystal ball. The same goes for the smartwatch episode I mentioned earlier, or the one where we showed the Rolling Stones still touring in their old age. That's not a prediction. That's just a pretty safe bet. Rock stars love money and attention, and as long as people keep buying tickets, they're going to keep performing. Saying the Stones would still be touring decades later is like predicting that I'll still love donuts when I'm 80. It's not exactly going out on a limb. Now, let's talk about this idea that keeps popping up about artificial intelligence going rogue and turning against humanity. We've definitely done episodes about robots and computers becoming self-aware and causing problems. People point to these and say we're warning everyone about the dangers of AI. And sure, maybe there's some of that in there. But robot uprising stories have been around forever. From Frankenstein to the Terminator to the Matrix, humans have been imagining technology turning against us since we invented the steam engine. Our writers weren't predicting anything new. They were just riffing on fears that already existed in the culture. Plus, it makes for good comedy when Robot Homer tries to kill regular Homer. That's just solid entertainment right there. The thing is, satire works by taking current trends and exaggerating them to absurd levels to make a point. That's what our show has always done. We look at what's happening in the world, in technology, in politics, in society, and we stretch it out to ridiculous extremes. Sometimes, reality catches up with our exaggerations, which makes it seem like we predicted the future. But really, we were just following trajectories that were already in motion. If you're paying attention to the world around you, a lot of future developments aren't that hard to guess. They're just the logical extension of what's already happening. Take the episode where we showed hamburger eaters being spied on through their phones and devices. People say we predicted mass surveillance and privacy concerns. But even back in the 90s, people who were paying attention knew that as technology advanced, privacy was going to become a bigger issue. Cell phones could track your location, credit cards recorded your purchases, security cameras were popping up everywhere. It didn't take a genius to imagine that this trend would continue and that corporations and governments would use technology to monitor people. Our writers just made a joke about it by having someone's burger choices being watched. That's commentary, not clairvoyance. Here's another thing that drives me crazy. When we get something wrong, which happens all the time, nobody talks about it. We've made jokes and predictions that never came true, but those don't get shared on social media because they're not interesting. Only the hits get remembered, the misses get forgotten. It's like how everyone remembers the one time I fixed the refrigerator, but nobody remembers the 17 times I made it worse. Selective memory makes it seem like we're batting 1,000 when really we're just getting lucky occasionally in a sea of regular comedy writing. Let me give you an example. We've done episodes imagining all sorts of futures that never happened. Moon colonies, jetpacks becoming common, video phones being standard technology by the year 2000. Oh, wait. That last one kinda happened, but not in the way we showed it. See, even when we get something sort of right, the details are usually way off. We didn't predict Zoom calls and FaceTime. We just assumed that video phones would eventually be a thing because people have been trying to make them work since the 1960s. The technology finally caught up to the idea, but that's not the same as us having special knowledge of the future. And can we talk about how sometimes the things we supposedly predicted were already being discussed in the real world? Like when we did a joke about horse meat being in food products, and then years later there was a scandal in Europe about horse meat being found in beef products. People said we predicted it. But food contamination and mislabeling scandals have been happening forever. It wasn't a prediction, it was a gross-out joke based on existing food industry problems. We just happened to make the joke before a specific real-world scandal hit the news. Timing, not telepathy. The voting machine episode is another one people love. We showed a voting machine changing votes from one candidate to another, and then similar problems happened in real elections. But electronic voting machines were controversial from the moment they were introduced. Computer experts were warning about potential problems with them. Our writers just made a joke about something that tech people were already concerned about. We didn't foresee the future. We just listened to people who understood the technology. You know what the real truth is here? Our writers are smart, observant people who pay attention to the world. They read the news, they follow trends, they understand human nature, and they're plugged into popular culture. When you combine all of that with good comedic instincts and a willingness to satirize everything, sometimes you end up making jokes that later seem prophetic. But it's not magic. It's just good writing, based on careful observation of reality. Think about it this way. If I tell you that someday there's going to be another war somewhere in the world, and then 5 years later a war breaks out, did I predict the future? No. I just made an incredibly safe bet based on human history. Wars happen. They've always happened. Saying another one will occur eventually isn't prophecy. The same logic applies to most of our so-called predictions. Economic crashes happen periodically. Technology keeps advancing. Politicians say and do ridiculous things. Celebrity scandals occur. These are patterns, not mysteries. Another thing people forget is that we have a team of writers from different backgrounds with different areas of expertise. Some of them have science degrees. Some follow politics obsessively. Some are tech enthusiasts. When you put all these perspectives together in a writer's room, you get a pretty good sense of where things might be heading. It's like having a bunch of experts sitting around making educated guesses and then turning those guesses into jokes. Sometimes the educated guesses turn out to be right. That's not supernatural. That's just how expertise works. I also want to point out that a lot of these prediction claims are really stretches when you look at them closely. Like people say we predicted smartwatches, but what we actually showed was just a phone attached to a wrist. The actual smartwatches we have now do way more than that and look completely different. We predicted video calling, except we imagined it being done on wall-mounted screens in every home, not on phones people carry in their pockets. The broad concept was right, but all the details were wrong. That's not really a prediction. That's more like throwing spaghetti at a wall and claiming victory when one noodle sticks. And let's be honest about something else. Some of these predictions only seem accurate because people retrofit the interpretation after the fact. They look at a vague joke from an old episode and map it onto a current event, ignoring all the ways they don't actually match up. It's like astrology. If you make the prediction vague enough and interpret it flexibly enough, you can make it fit almost anything. We showed a character who was a business person in real estate becoming president. That could have been Donald Trump, but it also could have been any number of other wealthy real estate developers if they had run and won. The joke worked because the type was recognizable, not because we had specific knowledge of future events. Here's the bottom line, and I want you to really hear this, because I'm getting tired of people thinking I'm some kind of time-traveling prophet when I can barely remember what day of the week it is. The Simpsons doesn't predict the future. What we do is observe the present really carefully, understand historical patterns, and make jokes about where things seem to be heading. Sometimes we're right because the patterns continue. Sometimes we're wrong because things change in unexpected ways. And sometimes things that seem like predictions are actually just coincidences or people seeing connections that aren't really there. The reason this prediction thing has become such a big deal is because people love mysteries and the idea that maybe someone somewhere knows what's coming next. It's comforting in a weird way to think that the future is predictable, even if the predictions are coming from a cartoon. But the truth is much more boring. We're just a TV show, written by clever people who pay attention. That's it. No time machines, no psychic powers, no secret knowledge of future events. Just good satire based on understanding how the world works. So the next time you see some article or video claiming that The Simpsons predicted something else, take a step back and think about it critically. Ask yourself if it's really a prediction or just a logical observation about trends. Check if the screenshot is real or photoshopped. Consider how many things we got wrong that nobody talks about. And remember that with 30+ years of content, some coincidences are inevitable. Now, if you'll excuse me, all this talking about the future has made me thirsty, and I'm pretty confident I can predict what's going to happen next. I'm going to go drink a beer, probably spill some on my shirt, and Marge is going to give me that look she gives me. See, I can predict the future too, especially when it involves my own bad habits. That's the real secret to prophecy, knowing what's probably going to keep happening because it always has. And that's exactly what our show does, except we make it funny. Or at least we try to. So, I need that beer.